Charter Republic Radio Veteran Shoutout Show with your co-hosts Mike Tooman and Paul Burvitt every Saturday noon until 2 on WRMN 1410 AM. Streaming live on WRMN1410.com. That's like the best way. It's so clear. There's no interference from the wind or anything or knocking your antenna around. Or you can watch us live on WRMN 1410's YouTube channel where we'll be. And our producer here, Sonar, says we're going to be on their Facebook channel, streaming there too. And if you want to call us in, I already said that, right? 847-931-1410. You could comment on the YouTube live channel, or you could give us a text at 505-926-1410. How you doing, Paul?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I learned quite a bit in studying up a little for this show. Stuff that I knew a little, but they teach you so little, you really have to dig into it, and then other things start to make sense. But first of all, the Dunkin' Donuts veterans will not be meeting at Dunkin' Donuts. We will be meeting at the Bunker Hill Woods Pavilion number 5, or Grove number 5. The Bunker Hill Woods, Grove number 5. So that'll be Tuesday, 9 until like 10:30. So just come out to the woods there, bring your own coffee. Usually they have coffee and donuts if you want to, you want to live on the scraps, but you can bring your own too. And that's for any veteran. And one of the people that I meet there all the time is Miss Sherry McKee. And she wrote a book, and hopefully I could have her on the show. And her book is Museums, Monuments, and Memorials. All right. And it's available on Amazon. That's where I found it, and many other retailers. So unlike me, where I self-publish on Amazon and they print them up as needed, she's got like a regular publisher. Who's the publisher here? Compiled in USA. Come to the first one. And it says Elm Grove Publishing, San Antonio, Texas. So you could probably find it through them too. But this is like a little handbook, and it's got the addresses of a lot of military significant museums in the States. So it's like something that you could put in your glove compartment. And if you're driving cross country or on vacation this summer and you want to take a stop from driving and just walk around and stretch your legs, or you stop somewhere and you want to see something, there's like it lists the significant museums. Let me see. I'm looking for the I's now. I went right past Iowa. So between Iowa and Indiana is Illinois. And, of course, we got the National Veterans Art Museum, 4041 North Milwaukee Avenue in Chicago, and one like the Illinois State Military Museum for the National Guard. That's 1301 North MacArthur Boulevard, also known as Camp Lincoln. All right, so 1301 North MacArthur Boulevard, Springfield, Illinois. And they used to just have it in one of the old barracks, dilapidated, everything else. It was okay. But then they put a real hardcore press into it, right? And they took the old post office, which used to be an old prison, all right, jail prison, and they took that and they converted it to the Illinois National Guard Museum. And what they have there is Santa Anna's Lake. And we're going to talk about that today. So we have the Illinois National Guard captured Santa Anna's Lake, not during the Texas, where Santa Anna was the Texas War of Independence, right? It was because the Illinois National Guard, well, the militia at the time would not have been sent down there, but they were down in the Mexican-American War, and they helped capture Santa Anna's Lake. Well, he was eating dinner, and he had his leg off, and he got surprised by the Illinois militia, and they chased him away, and he hopped on his horse because he couldn't run to his horse. He hopped on his horse, and he left his leg behind. So they ate his dinner, and they grabbed his leg. All right, so there's other places in there. If you're on your way down to Springfield, in Pontiac, there's another one. I'll put out. See, I just lost the I's. – Iowa, Indiana. All right, let me see. What was it called? Arsenal to Russell Museum. I got to look for Pontiac here. Oh yeah, the Livingston County War Museum, and that's another free one. It's on the second floor. It might look like an old surplus store. They have a lot of mannequins dressed up in period uniforms that were donated. So those are that's a pretty good place to go and look at all this stuff. Most of the guys from Illinois. So Paul, remember the Alamo, right?
Yep. 1836.
1836, and
we just had in March. We had the anniversary of the Battle of the Alamo, the 13-day siege.
Yeah, that was the war. The Battle of Gonzales actually started in 1835. So there was a battle there. A couple battles, and then they declared independence. They didn't declare independence until the 2nd of March. So there was rumors and innuendos of an uprising, not an uprising, but organizing a resistance to the Mexican rule. And so they came up, Santa Anna sent troops up there to quell the people, what do they call, there's a good word for it, not I'm just going to say pacifying, to go up there and pacify them. And, you think of pacification of giving a baby a binky or something, and like, here, a pacifier. Here, baby's crying. Give them a pacifier. They suck on it. They're all happy. Give them some frozen Sweetback. Give them some, sweet milk or something there, and he's all happy. But in the military sense, pacification basically means beat them until they comply. And so, he sends them up to pacification, and the war goes on until like the 14th of May. So it's not really long. It's 1835. It's slightly over a year and a half from the first battles, but from the declaration, it's a little less than the declaration. It's like 3 months. And the important thing there is that Texas was a territory. The Mexican government that wasn't very stable. They were changing leadership all the time, right? And before this, you had the Mexican War for independence. So it really starts there, because before you had a imperial force, Spain, a giant imperial force, right? They had colonized all North America, a lot of the Caribbean, a lot of the Pacific Islands, because at one time Spain was a massive naval force. In fact, Christopher Columbus, although he's Italian and the Italians claim him, and shout out to Dino, right? He got funded through Queen Isabella and Ferdinand of Spain, right? So it all comes back to there. But you have, much like our revolution, and they see it, right, Paul? So it's 1775 and everything, we're all cool because we're all kind of colonies under the British rule. Although you had Dutch, you had German, you had that. We all kind of fall under the British rule. They had the French, right? And we have a revolution, and we beat the next largest colonial power, Great Britain, the United Kingdom. And now Mexico, you got educated people, established towns, established leadership, and they want independence from Spain too, because they see no benefit in being associated with Spain and funding Spain through what were they doing? They're taking silver, they're taking gold, they're taking everything they could, and what did they bring back to Mexico?
Disease.
I mean, the Spanish, what did they bring? Well,
they introduced smallpox and all that stuff to it.
Yeah, but I'm saying
Well, they got nothing out of it. They got no benefit from it.
Yeah. So if you're sitting there and you're working your butt off and you're sending 90% of your taxes to Spain of everything you earn, and you're like, you're getting tired of this, you say, hey, why do I have to listen to these guys when I get no benefit? So they have their War of Independence, and that goes on all the way from 1810 to 1821. All right. And finally, the Spanish give up on it, and you have a Mexican empire, not the United Estados Unidos Mexico, right? You have the Great Mexican Empire, which later on for a short time turned into a Mexican monarchy. That, so they
Emperor Maximilian.
Yeah. So then, by 1821, they're under self-rule. They're self-rule, but they claim a lot of territory, and not just Texas, right? But it goes all the way up into like South Dakota, all that territory there, California, everything. They claim it, although it is extremely sparsely populated. It's like you put a man on the moon, and then you say, well, we're first on the moon, so the entire moon is ours because it's one continent, but we own it. I think that's fair, right, Paul?
Absolutely.
But we've set up nothing there. We've established nothing.
A flag.
We haven't homestead. There's no industry going. There's no infrastructure. There's no improvements, right? We just left our garbage there. So you got Spain that comes over, and now you already had the Russians had established, in Alaska, and going south, pretty much towards San Francisco, the Russians had established trading forts, right? So that was like part of Russia too, right? Because they laid claim to that. But Spain laid claim, they set up presidios, which are forts, little forts, and they also set up they sent over the nuns and the priests, the orders came over, Franciscans, Dominicans, everything, and they're setting up churches, communities, but not very large. No one was building anything there. There was a little bit of farming.
They were all missions. Missions. They set up the missions.
So that's pretty much Spain's claim, is they have these missions, and now they got a problem with that northern territory, that a lot of it is occupied by the Native Americans, who are compliant with nobody except themselves. So they're under Spain. Spain can't control them. They don't want them taken over. They have a few Hispanic people or Castilian that live in the Texas area that have land and everything. And in order to defend yourself, you need people. Right? One guy isn't going to hold them off. So they invite in a bunch of Americans, because we're getting people in from the East all the time, right? From France, Germany, the Austro-Hungarian Empire at the time, right? People are coming in. They're coming in from Norway, Great Britain, Ireland, all these people coming in to the United States. And they're like, hey, there's all this free land if you go to Texas, which is part of Mexico. So they're not necessarily looking for the fineness of the United States and our wonderful Constitution, right? They're looking for land. A lot of these guys are farmers or tradesmen. They just want land. They want something they could do, somewhere where they could work, somewhere where they could apply their trade and make more money. So Texas seemed to be the thing. So the Mexicans said, hey, you come into Texas, we'll make you a Mexican citizen, which they did, right? They did. But now you got a problem, because, all right, everyone put on your tinfoil hat. And before I forget, the radio broadcast is going to cut off at the half hour and lead into the White Sox game. At the half hour, in 10 minutes. Yeah. And so is our streaming. So if you're on 1410 AM in your car, and all of a sudden the White Sox are gone, or you're on streaming in your car, and all of a sudden the White Sox are on and we're gone, quickly switch over to YouTube. or Facebook and go to the live broadcast of our show. All right, so I just had to warn people about that. So they're like, oh, it was a great show. And then all of a sudden the White Sox came on. Okay. Nothing against the White Sox. Great. Grew up on the South Side. Actually worked in the 9th District when they were tearing down Old Comiskey, having to protect the bricks from the people trying to steal bricks. I want a brick, dude. Just give me a brick. Dude, I can't do it. It's my job to watch these bricks. Literally, that's my job, to watch the bricks. I'm not losing my job because I gave you a free brick. And who still has those bricks? You know, are they really collector's items? Did you pay way too much for a brick? All right, so now a lot of the people that are coming in too are people that had some money that want to expand, and we got a guy like some smart guys like Houston. What was his first name? Sam Houston.
Sam.
All right, and I think, all right, so you watch these videos, right? I wasn't there. I wasn't alive during that time. All right. I wasn't there. I have been reincarnated. I haven't gone out of body and time traveling to watch it. But some of the theories were that Polk, as president, had said, dude, we are going to expand. All right? We're going to expand. So I want my guy here, all right, who I know is, although a heavy drinker and everything else, I know he's a good guy. I can trust him. And he sends him into Mexico. And they formulate a thing that should be happening. I talk about this. There's special forces imperatives, and they're in the special operations imperatives, and they're there, all right? So you already had a bunch of Caucasians, all right? Caucasians. And some of these Caucasians have brought their slaves. And in Mexico, you couldn't have a slave, all right? So Texas still being part of Mexico, you couldn't have a slave. So maybe it's kind of a war to keep that, but these guys were rich. They had money and everything, and they wanted to protect their thing. So God knows what they told them, but they were fomenting a disenfranchised minority up in Texas. And Mexico came up, Santa Anna sent troops up there to fight them, which only made it worse. So what you had is Sam Houston comes in. He is linking up with the revolutionaries or the rebellion. He's linking up with the rebellion, and he's leading them, and they're organizing, and they're starting to have a couple actions, like the Battle of Goliad and the Battle of Concepcion, where they have a little bit of success. Now, these aren't very large battles. They're not 5,000, 10,000, 100,000. They're a couple hundred guys at a time. Because, again, you think of Texas as millions of people. It was like dozens of people back then. It was sparsely populated. And if you didn't include the Native Americans, all right, who came over across the earth. But some of them said that they came over from Micronesia. Right? Who knows? Polynesia. There's the land bridge, but there's also the Polynesians that came over, and they proved that they could get all the way across the Pacific from there. That was proven. But, all right, so they have a little bit of success, and now...
Would it be safe to say these were skirmishes?
Skirmishes. And one of the big things was that they had captured like 40 soldiers. The Mexicans did, and then they executed them. 40, quote, soldiers, the rebellion, the Mexicans consider them traitors, but they massacre them, right? And this is after the declaration, they declared independence. And just then, like the same day, the Mexicans massacre these 40 guys, right? So now you have the Alamo, and you have Houston, and like everyone's seen the movies, and Houston is not coming to relieve the Alamo. You got 200 guys there, 183, right? He's not coming to relieve them. He really doesn't have the manpower to do that, right? But It's a delay tactic while he organizes. And what does he do? As soon as Santa Anna's finished with the Alamo, he sends up, he splits his forces, one to go pacify part of Texas and one to eliminate Sam Houston and his forces. Sam Houston moves east, hoping to get into the territory that Texas, that the United States says, well, this has always been ours. It's contested with Mexico, but this is our territory. So Mexico may say it's Texas and it's their territory, but we say it's ours. So if the Mexicans enter to the territory we say is the U.S. territory, then the U.S. enters the war because that's an act of war against the United States, right? So the U.S. can enter the war now. But Sam Houston can't make it. His troops are tired. He found a defensive position. He can't make it to the U.S. territory. But suddenly, out of nowhere, 500 volunteers appeared, and they were able to defeat Santa Anna at the, what is it, the San Chiquito, and they captured Santa Anna. All right, this guy is like, he's like a bad penny and won't go away. I kind of have a respect for this guy, right? I mean, he's and they hold him up and they're like, dude, man, we got you. You're the leader, you're the supreme leader, and also you're generalissimo and everything, but you're the supreme leader, so we're going to have you sign this treaty saying that that Texas is independent. You're giving us independence, and we're going to give you your life, right? So you remember this. So we have, so they sent them back, right? The treaty had been signed, and now Texas is independent as of the 14th of May of 1836. But Mexico still, when Santa Anna gets back, they're like, hey, that doesn't count because what were you going to do, not sign in and get killed? Well, he could have done that, but he didn't, right? So that's not where they captured his leg. So he still kept his leg. He doesn't lose his leg till later on, then like a decade later after all this. So now he gets back to Mexico, and they kind of deport his ass because he's kind of a miserable failure as a generalissimo. And so now Texas is sitting there, independent. We haven't annexed it or anything, but we claim it independent. And Sam Houston, he becomes like the first thing, and they write their constitution. Everything's cool up until like 1845. And when we come back, we're going to discuss now. The lead into this is kind of like the Alamo, right? The Texas War of Independence. And now the continuation of this a decade later is the Mexican-American War. That's comrades. This is Chief Guard of the Republic Radio Show with your co-hosts Paul Burvitt and Mike Tuman every Saturday, noon until 2. And we're here. The White Sox game is playing. I guess we're no longer on the air, so if the reason you don't hear us on your car radio and you had to come over to your cell phone with the Bluetooth or had to go to YouTube on your television set or whatever is because White Sox are playing. All right, Paul, so I was kind of blabbing away there like mad. I didn't let you in too much, so sorry about that. But there's another factor here, though, that is at play, though. It's one within the United States itself, because the United States did not at the time want Texas to come in as a slave state. Yes. They didn't want to upset the balance. So what happened was they let it kind of, go the Republic route, if you get my drift. Yep.
So that it solved the problem that had been going on in Washington with the slave and the free states at the time, which kind of contributed to all of this a little bit.
So, we had the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, right?
Correct.
And at the time, you got you got Texas there, and they say, oh, that's going to be a slave state. But then in the meantime, you have these northern states, Illinois, you have Illinois, you have Wisconsin, you have Iowa, everything from the Louisiana Purchase is, everything west of the Mississippi is starting to come in play. And Missouri and Kansas, they're looking at those as, are they going to be free or slave states? But later on, you got in 1845, right? That's when the U.S. comes in, and finally, this is 9 years later after the Republic. I don't know what's in there, but we're talking about a thing, manifest destiny, right? Manifest destiny, which is kind of like a legal term on what did they do when you have your home that you lived on for 1,000 years, and the city says they want to make a sewage plant out of it, and you're like, hey, I don't want it, but they come into court, and the court says, well, the city only's got to pay you $10 for that so they can build their sewage plant. That's called eminent domain, right? The city has eminent domain over that. So we're kind of saying we got eminent domain we're pushing everyone's pushing out of Europe into the East Coast and pushing away to the West Coast, pushing through, building infrastructure, everything, getting everything moved, manifest destiny that we have the blessing of God to do this. It's our destiny. It's what we need to do. And some things you can see that, a volcano with lava coming down, and it's coming close to, well, that lava is going to burn up that town if that town don't move. All right? So now, the U.S. annexes Texas, and I think the key takeaway here is that the Mexicans declare war on the United States first. Like, we don't declare war on them, all right? They declare war on the United States, saying that the act of us taking Texas, annexing it, was an act of war against them. And we're like, no, it really isn't. But we move troops into Texas, and there's a disputed territory again. Like, Mexico says, well, Texas only went up to this river, and we said it went up to the Rio Grande, right? So the troops get moved into this disputed territory, and they get attacked again by Mexican forces, at which time they get stomped by the U.S. forces. In fact, it is starting to be a steamroller, all right? We declare war on them, right? But here's the best part, right? I think for those 9 years, there was like a buildup, right? Because you had Polk, and then you had Polk there. After this part, Taylor becomes in because he makes his bones in But Polk was
Tyler too.
That's Tyler. Was it Tyler?
Yeah,
Zachary Taylor.
The War of 1812.
All right. So the thing is, we're pushing forces into Texas and into kind of we're having some skirmishes there, but at the same time, they're moving forces. Zachary Taylor is moving his forces across New Mexico and Arizona, right? In the event that to go to take California, because again, people think that these things are greatly populated. They're not. There's nothing. There's wilderness and a few haciendas here and everything. So you're not really taking a major city. You're taking a village that has a name that's going to be a major city in the future. But the great thing is, this is why you need a Navy. If you're going to be a power, if you're going to defend yourself in any way, you need a Navy. Because around the U.S. Navy sent a couple ships around our Straits of Magellan.
Cape of Good Horn.
I think they went through the Straits of Magellan, which was kind of like, it was pretty brutal. All right, they could have went to the Cape of Good Horn, but they go around the Straits of Magellan, all right, which is a lot more dangerous than going across. But it's actually shorter distance somehow, right? And they seized Monterey, they seized Los Angeles, they seized San Francisco. Again, you're thinking these are big towns and everything, but back then they weren't, right? They were like missions. You know, you had the Presidio of San Francisco, which was a small fort where San Francisco is now, Spanish fort. You had the Presidio of Monterey, which is a small fort kind of on a hill outside Monterey Harbor, right? And then you have Los Angeles down there, and they just seized it almost without a shot being fired. Boom, because there's not enough Spanish forces there. But we are able to project, there are not enough Mexican forces there. We're able to project our forces there. And then to kick it off, right? Here comes the Navy under Winfield Scott, right? Comes down with mass amount of forces and goes right for the capital. Right for the capital. He's going to have after Mexico City, right? Because where are you going to... Again, Mexico was sparsely populated compared to all the Europeans coming in. And he lands at Veracruz, and then he starts marching on Mexico City. And even Europe thought this was nuts and everything when it happened. But sure enough, it only took a couple months, and bam, he takes Mexico City. He occupies Mexico City, and Mexico ceases to exist. It's basically a governorship under Winfield Scott. He's the military governor of all of Mexico now. So they take Polk really wanted to just annex all of Mexico, which included all of California, like I said, New Mexico, Arizona, parts of Nevada, all the way up to South Dakota, parts of Colorado, part of South Dakota, everything that wasn't in the Louisiana Purchase, all right? He wants to just annex that into the United States because, hey, we took it over. There's no more armed opposition yet. So he sends one of this guys, Trist or something. I think the guy's name is Trist. He sends this guy down to Winfield Scott, who is now the governor of Mexico City, Mexico, right? He marched his force, Tippecanoe, or from the halls of Montezuma. That's what you're talking about, right there. The Marines, boom. They go there, and they sign a treaty in which Mexico secedes like everything north of the Rio Grande, right? So not the current borders, because later on we purchased more space off of that. But everything north of the Rio Grande, they sign over to the United States, which includes Texas, right? But we end up paying like $15 million. That's close to $250 million of today's money, which doesn't seem like a lot, but of course, there's no one there. You're not buying a major city. You're not buying a major coal mining operation. You're not buying a forestry operation. You're not buying farmland and everything. You're buying vacant land that's, the occupants are pretty much Native Americans, and they're not really friendly to your expansionism, so you're going to have to pacify them rather than the Mexican government. And the deal here was that Mexico had been so balkanized by these warlords, right? Like, why did they kick Santa Anna out? He was the generalissimo. We let him go, he came back. Well, he lost all of his power. He lost face and everything, right? But now he had come back again. Right? Because they were like, holy cow, these Americans are kicking our butts. And he says, hey, I think he was in Cuba, right? And he's like, hey, I'm over here in Cuba. You let me back into Mexico. I know how to fight those Americans. And they let him back in. And this is where he gets his leg captured. During the Mexican-American War. Not during the Texas War of Independence. Mexican-American War. Because the 20th Illinois, the 20th, I believe the 20th Regiment of Illinois National Guard, they called militia, Illinois militia, went down there, right? And they're the ones that captured the lake, which you could see down in Springfield, Illinois, at Camp Lincoln, at the Military Museum, the Illinois National Guard Military Museum. It is on prominent display. The Mexican government keeps asking for it back, and we keep saying no. But, all right, so after we seize this territory, we pay for it. We pay for the territory. We say, okay, we had purchased, Louisiana purchased for this much. We're going to pay Mexico that much. It's not a war reparation. I guess it's a way to say, well, we're not really imperialistic. We paid for it. After it's like putting a gun to their head. Hey, you're going to sell me this land. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. But you can see again, so going back to the special operations imperative I talked about and how it kind of plays in current events, right? You had an established disenfranchised population that wanted regime change, or they wanted separation from that regime. They were established, and you linked up with them, right? You sent the guy in there to train them and link up with them, and then you started slightly supplying them, and they started taking out actions and everything. What we did in Iran, none of that existed. None of it existed. There's no organized resistance because they've all been wiped out. They've been killed. Terrible thing. We're not linking up with everyone. We're not arming them. We're not training them and everything. It's going to drag on for a while. I think it'll happen, but what they did in Texas is a perfect example. And then they waited a little, and we came in and took them, annexed it. We could have had all of Mexico. In fact, when this Trist guy came back, Polk threw him out. And they didn't pay him. And they barred him from any employment. The guy was like a government lackey, right? That's the only way he made his money. He didn't know how to do anything else. But they blacklisted him. No one would hire him, right? Because, he basically gave the Mexico back. But here's what I'm trying to get along. Do you think we had, at the time, the infrastructure and the military force to keep Mexico, to pacify the warlords and all the other guys down there?
No.
It's probably, your guy looks at overextending, right? He's like, oh, this would be great. But how many lives would have been lost fighting minor guerrilla skirmishes all over? And most guys that went down there were lost to not gunfire, disease.
Malaria and diseases.
Yellow fever, malaria, dengue fever, everything down there that you think, when you live up in Maine, you're not going to get malaria. When you're from maybe Virginia, but the northern, you're not going to get this. And transporting the food and getting bad food, and these guys, not getting supplied, not getting clean water and everything. Now you're going to have to supply that, or you might have to. Here's all right. In order to keep from moving troops from north, right? Like the British had to move them clean across the Atlantic. And the Spain had to move them clean across the Atlantic, right? We would have to move them clean down to Mexico. Otherwise, we would have to train up a indigenous force. And how did that work for the British?
Not well.
Because you had the British training up indigenous forces. In fact, they mandated firearm ownership to protect from the Indians, right? There's the French and Indian War, in which a lot of these guys in the Revolutionary War got a lot of experience in. All right? It was even like Lincoln got experience in the Indian Wars. Lincoln was against the declaration of war against Mexico.
That's correct.
Because he's like, where exactly did they kill these U.S. troops?
Right.
Because he could have argued that was contested territory. It's not really our territory, But who knows? I think it kind of worked out well, and I think it was probably the right decision not to annex all of Mexico at that time, because we would have been in a constant state of war down there. All right? So we pull out. A lot of our Civil War generals were lieutenants and captains at the time, and they're receiving not a great deal. Like I said, these weren't massive battles between hundreds of thousands of troops. It wasn't a Gettysburg. It wasn't a Shiloh. It wasn't the Wilderness. It wasn't Chattanooga. It wasn't Fredericksburg, right? These were a couple thousand troops. Right? I think the most Santa Anna ever had was like 12,000 troops at one time. And I think Zachary Taylor had like 4,000, 3 to 4,000. No, Winfield Scott had like 3 to 4,000. And through the proper application of grape shot, they massively defeated Santa Ana. But you can't. That works well when you got a force coming at you, charging across an open field. Just
in an open field, yeah.
Yeah, but when you're talking about guerrilla forces coming out of the hills and going back into the hills and hitting runs and everything. So now Mexico is back to itself, right? Except it's like lost over half of its territory, but not half of its population. There's the key thing, right? It has the territory, but that wasn't the populated territory. Populated territory is still south of the Rio Grande. Right? So now, because there's so much political turmoil, right, which Santa Anna had come in and claimed to be emperor again and this and everything else, there's political turmoil, that France comes in. France comes in and it's their intervention. They're going to intervene in Mexico because Mexico is like, well, what France was at war with Spain, right? And they didn't want Spain to go back and seize this because France had, what, Haiti? No, they didn't have Haiti at that time. But the French didn't want the Spanish to get back in there and to be actually in charge of Mexico again and to have the raw materials coming out of Mexico. So they go and they intervene. And then that's where you get Cinco de Mayo, right, Paul?
Right.
Is when the Mexicans defeated the French in a 2-year war, right? Mexicans versus the French. And then there's constantly civil wars going on down there. 1910 to 1920, constant civil war, right? Mexico, you don't have to worry about it because they're too busy fighting themselves to organize to fight everyone else. It's not the man that would be king out there where one guy comes in and pacifies all the other warlords and puts them all under his command with an iron fist and then goes to start to expand. That wasn't happening. They're all fighting to be in charge of Mexico and not worrying about any of the other borders. So now, Spain still has territory. I mean, they don't have Mexico anymore, but they got territory, and we have like a Cubans now. Cuba wants independence from Spain several years later, right? Several years later. And we look at it, we're still in the manifest destiny thing, and we're like, yeah, this should be easy pickings, right? It's just south of, it's nice weather, and it's just south of Miami, Florida, and everything. And they already have an established agricultural society. Sugarcane, right? Big thing. Sugar's a big thing and everything. Tobacco, all that stuff. And so what happens? Well, someone's pushing for war.
Well, kind of though. The Spanish were not nice to the indigenous population of Cuba.
According to whom?
According to the Cubans and according to certain politicians in Washington.
And newspaper guys.
Well, that came later, but they created like a concentration camp type effect.
Yep.
Where a huge part of the Cuban population perished under the what you call administration of Spain. Okay, and it had been at the time. It had been being pushed. There were concentration camps where over 170,000 people had died, which was 10% of the population of Cuba. Okay, and that's clear. Whether it was engineered or not is another story. So there had been a war for Cuban independence that had started around 1895. Okay, And
Yes.
there was a cry called Cuba Libre.
Yeah, it's a
Free
great
Cuba.
drink.
Yeah, liberate Cuba. And some of the battles were at daiquiri, another great drink. Okay, so what happened was there was a very bad internal problem in Cuba. Okay, and there was again, Washington has got to assert itself. Okay, in its own mind. So what they say is we got to start protecting our interests and, kind of help the people of Cuba. Okay. So we're going to send our what was the eventual pre-dreadnought fleet of the Great White Fleet to Havana Harbor on January the 25th, 1898. Okay. Yep. And it went to the harbor and it kind of moored itself there. Now, it was there mostly to present an American presence, but it was there for intelligence, and it was also there to try to stop the Spain from doing what they were doing. All right. And then something tragic and unexpected happened. And what that was an explosion in February of 1898. And we had our battleship, the Maine, and it was in harbor and it was moored. And on February the 15th, 1898, there was a sudden explosion. And at that time, the battleship had a crew of 355 and 268 of them were killed. So 3/4 of their crew perished in the explosion.
Yeah. So were we at war with Spain at the time?
No.
Did Spain ban us from being in their harbor?
They didn't want us there.
But they didn't say no. They didn't want us there, correct. But it's an open, a lot of these open ports and laws of the sea and everything. And we just went in and it's kind of like, rattling a saber in their face and everything. But yeah, we're there. We're showing use of force. And for people that don't know, that this is a good learning point. Battleships are named after states. Right? So the Maine was a battleship, early dreadnought class. And the cruisers are named after cities. And destroyers are kind of named after peoples or events. Aircraft carriers could be named after people or event, like the Yorktown battle. And submarines are kind of named after fish, right?
Now they're named after cities, though, and states.
All right. Because they're pretty... Your average nuclear ballistic sub is probably a lot more powerful than the Iowa. Oh, look, the Iowa, it could hit us from 25 miles away. Really? How about 400?
Sonar would know this, but in some ways, the modern American ballistic missile submarine has more ordnance than was expended during World War II. Is that true?
Well, probably when you talk about tonnage, explosive tonnage, as explosive, not the tonnage of the explosions, but the explosive yield in tonnage.
That would be correct, yeah.
Yeah, so
well, that's
kind of leads up to it, right? And they
right,
it's something.
That's important because the cry was remember the Maine, but to hell with Spain.
Yeah, but who declared war on who first?
Okay, well, it's not that simple. Okay, so the Maine was blown up on February the 15th. Okay, but there's a long, complicated process because there was a naval board of inquiry, and and you're right, we were not at war with Spain. So Spain conducted their own inquiry, and the Spanish investigation determined that it was an accident. But the American investigation, called the Sampson Board, determined that it was, quote, a torpedo, okay? And that information came out around early March, okay? It was March the 28th. So the explosion was in February. You got almost 45 days for the board. And what happened was there was great problems both in the Navy and in the government, because a lot of people said that the explosion was an accident, because at the time we were using bituminous coal, which was very explosive, and it had ignited 5 long tons of the magazine. Because remember, even the Iowa battleships until the end, they used canisters of silk bags of black powder, okay? So what happened was there was a big internal problem, because some people said, hey, don't jump to the conclusion that it was an outside source. It was, in fact, just an explosion because of the heat, the bituminous coal. But then, as you pointed out last week, Teddy Roosevelt was the undersecretary of the Navy, and he wrote letters saying, hey, don't rule out an explosion, okay? Don't rule out the explosion. And then by then, Spain had started acting in a way that was not proper. And what happened was, on around April the 20th, they told us to get out and declared a state of conflict. And then the next day, the American legislature, meaning Congress, declared that we were at war. And we formally declared war with Spain on April the 21st, 1898. So it was a 60-day deal almost that between the Maine exploding and us declaring war on Spain.
So, okay, so now here's the key thing, right? That before this, who's Dewey's fleet, right? I think Dewey was at Manila Harbor, right? Because Spain.
No. See, that's another issue. Okay, so what happened was,
I'm saying he fought in Manila Harbor. He was actually in Hong Kong, and then he got booted out of Hong Kong to he went to some outside of the British influence port in China, and from there.
Okay. So what happened was Dewey scored the first victories. Okay, in the Battle of Manila Harbor occurred on May the 1st, 1898. Okay, and to be honest with you, nobody died in the attack on the American side, although 9 were injured. Okay, and you know what the famous quote from the Battle of Manila is?
No, what was that? I'm not going to say damn the torpedoes full speed ahead, but no.
That was John Paul Jones. It was Gridley, you may fire when you are ready.
Yeah, that's right.
And that was an order to Captain Charles Gridley on the cruiser Olympia. And that was on May the 1st, 1898. Now, there's kind of an interesting story. Turned out Gridley was dying, all right? He had what they think was cancer, but they weren't 100% sure. And after the Battle of the Manila, he was transferred to, I believe, a civilian ship to get him to go home because, and he died actually in Japan during the course of the war, but not the result of any war injury. The fact that he was dying when he was in command of Olympia. All right, and what happened was that this occurred 2 full months before the attacks in Cuba. Okay, so the United States had buttoned up Asia and gotten it free from Spain.
Okay, so
at that point.
So you got Guam, you got the Philippines, maybe several other islands there that Spain owned, right? But here's the thing that Roosevelt told Dewey even before, when this stuff was kicking off, get over to Manila and buckle them, get ready to buckle them up, right? So Dewey was, a distance away, and he moved ahead of time, like you're going to war. So you're going to put your pieces in place rather than play it from there. You want to have it. And he buckled them up in that harbor. And one of the key things is that we had a Navy that was being modernized. We had a modern Navy, modern gun, modern training, right? Spain was on the downhill slope of their great empire. They had a bunch of internal strife within their country. Their empire was kind of falling apart. They couldn't reach out. They had one time had a Navy, but the Navy hadn't been upgraded, hadn't been trained, hadn't been supplied. Yes, they bought some nice rifles, right? And they had nice rifles in Cuba on the ground level, but their Navy was far inferior. Although, like back in the day, the great armadas and everything. And yeah, they were so outclassed. They couldn't even close distance. The one thing they were worried about was that the destroyers would be able to close distance at night and launch torpedoes, kind of blind launch torpedoes at their ships. So they had a couple. Geez, it was just like one of the things that the Spanish did was because they knew they weren't gonna win, but they still had gunpowder and guns to fight with, so they beached the ship so it wouldn't sink. So you beach it, and now you got land batteries, right, coastal defense batteries instead of a ship. But they never got out of Manila Harbor. They got completely pummeled, which left.
Remember too, you're talking several years, about 12, 14 years before the radio. And you're talking that the only thing that had the power for lights and stuff were these cruisers and battleships, because they had electric generators on them, and they were able to use searchlights and other things at night in these battles, and because that was not available on shore to a great extent. And the ship itself, I remember reading a book about this at the time, the 100-year anniversary, that they had no radios. They're using signals, flags, semaphores, things like that, but they did have lights. And the battleships and the cruisers, because remember, you're talking 30 years before the Langley or anything approaching that. They used the lights from the ships, and they used their communications, and like you said, our more modern rifle-barreled heavy guns that were breech-loaded, and that had a dramatic impact on the way this was fought up until this time. Was like the greatest improvement up into the Battle of the Jutland and things like that in World War I.
Yeah, so now you don't have to worry about that fleet there. And here's the thing, right? Spain didn't have a huge amount of forces in the Philippines, right? Without a Navy, they didn't have airplanes, right? Without a Navy there, how are they going to get more forces into the Philippines to defend against us?
They would have to recruit indigenous, right?
Yeah, well, that wasn't working very well for them because the Spanish didn't treat their indigenous peoples very well, as we know in Cuba, right? So without a Navy to reinforce you, right, to bring supplies and everything else, you're dead in the water. You're surrounded. We did that with the Japanese. They had a huge Navy, and we just said, hey, we don't have to kill you on the island. We could bypass the island. You're just going to starve to death, right? Because we prevent your Navy from coming here, resupplying you. You're done. We don't have to kill you. We might drop a few bombs here and there to keep you occupied, but we don't really have to waste any time on you, right? Same thing in this. This is why the Navy projection and power has so much. This is why they bottled them up in Manila Bay. This is why they sank those ships, completely sank them, right? And this is why the Spanish said, don't let us capture the ships because we'll just use them to move more troops. Let's say we capture all the ships in Manila Bay, right? We don't sink them, we just capture them. We say, hey, surrender or get killed. We capture them. Now, we occupy those ships, we patrol with those ships, and our more modern ships come around the Straits of Magellan to battle in Cuba. Because wasn't it the Olympia? It was one of those battleships, one of the dreadnoughts, or an armored cruiser that had to come all the way because they didn't think they had enough forces, fast forces, to deal with the Spanish in Havana Harbor. So they brought one all the way around the Straits of Magellan. And they did the same thing there. They just destroyed the Spanish Navy, absolutely destroyed it. Without that, Cuba's not getting any reinforcements from Puerto Rico. They're not getting any reinforcements from all the other Spanish holdings or from Spain because they don't have a Navy to fight the World Navy.
That was on July the 3rd, 1898, in the Battle of Santiago de Cuba. Yeah. So that was in the harbor.
Yeah. So now we're able to bring in forces at will. We're able to bring in reinforcements. We're able to bring in equipment. We're able to bring in supplies, ammunition at will. The Spanish are not able to. They've already lost the war. All right? They've already lost the war. Again, why can't they form an indigenous force? Because those guys were treated so poorly. You killed off 10% of
their... Well, a lot of them, like I said, were in concentration camps and others.
But the guys that were there were still guys fighting, and the United States says they looked at their condition, the condition of the weapons and everything. They're like, okay, they're willing to fight, but are they capable of fighting one? We're not fighting a guerrilla war against the Spanish. We're going head on head, force on force, right? It's force on force. It's high-intensity conflict. It's not low-intensity conflict. The Cubans were fighting low-intensity conflict. So they would hit and run. That's what they're good at. And they're like, dudes, we're a force here, but we're not going to go force on force with these guys. We're not equipped for it. So they say, oh, they won't even, no, there's a difference there. Now if you take a while and train them up and arm them and get them there, are you good? But what are you doing when you do that, Paul? What are you doing when you're training? And this comes up to special operations imperatives. What are you doing when you trade in indigenous force?
Well, you're creating a bond and allies.
Well, you think you are, but you're actually creating your next enemy. You're training them up. You could be, right?
You could.
So as soon as the war is over, right, you got to take these guys and you got to disband them. Goodbye. Go back to your home. Go back here.
Well, that was an issue. That was an issue that because Roosevelt landed on June the 23rd, okay, and on July the 1st was the Battle of Kettle Hill and San Juan Hill. But when the war was done, he had written letters. He wanted the guys disbanded and brought home because they were starting to get diseases, and he did not want, like you're saying, he wanted to leave it then just for the Cubans to take care of it themselves. And he in fact wrote letters saying, I want these guys disbanded and we need to go home. And a lot of them, including what we talked about last week, Tiffany died of having the fever, and not because of any action. And they lost a lot more troops due to sickness and fevers than they did from any battle or conflict.
Yeah, it wasn't until much later, till when we were building the Panama Canal. All right, that came in like 1910, so it's way after the Spanish-American War. But then they decided, hey, this stuff is spread of mosquitoes. If we get rid of most of the mosquitoes, we're pretty good. You don't get it from getting bit by one mosquito. All right, your body will fight that off. One mosquito. You get bit by 50 mosquitoes with the yellow fever in it, your body's not going to be able to fight that off as quickly, right? It's just going to be inundated, and that's where you get it. But they figured out that if you dumped off all the stagnant water and you put an oil coating on these stagnant swamp areas and everything, that kills off the mosquitoes. And without the mosquitoes, the virus doesn't go anywhere. So that's one of the things. And then they, of course, they got the actual vaccine for yellow fever, and scarlet fever. I don't think there's a vaccine for dengue fever or malaria. They have to. Malaria is actually not a virus, it's a parasite. So it's a single cell organism that becomes parasitic. Yeah, so did we, Paul, did we pay for Cuba or the Philippines or Guam or Puerto Rico? I think we paid the Spanish government so much.
I don't know. I'm not aware that we paid them. We might have paid for some repairs to the island, but I don't think we paid them for. I don't know. I don't know. I thought I looked it up.
So yeah, I thought I looked it up, but the key here is right that all the other countries in the world have been, quote, imperialistic. They call it an empire, imperialistic, but it's also like colonizers, right? So they're spreading out. You have your country. It has reached, probably hasn't really, but it's reached kind of max population, and the only way you get more wealth is to take it from your neighbors, right? There's only so much wealth within that country. But there's these adventures that you go on where you could go to a sparsely populated area or a area that's not as industrially strong as you are. And you go there and you build infrastructure. With the infrastructure, you build wealth. You start harvesting their natural resources that they may not even know they had or cared about, right? And now you create wealth for yourself. So you're colonizing, and really,
we in the Treaty of Paris in December of 1898, we paid Spain $20 million for the Philippines.
Okay, I guess the Philippines back in 1940 something. After World War II, we actually turned the Philippines over back to the Filipinos, right?
Right.
And gave them the independence there. I don't know the politics behind that. Maybe we'll talk about that later on. But then we kept Guam, right? Which I like to call no, that's Taiwan. But Guam is still there. That's ours. That's a U.S. territory, right? And it's been a U.S. territory since the Spanish-American War. And the other one is Puerto Rico, just territory of protectorate of the United States. We took that from Spain. And then Cuba, right? So Cuba is kind of on its own. And then they have a, later on, they have a counter-revolution. But the same thing is going here. one of the things we're worried about is that if we don't put forces there, then one of the European powers would. And one of the European powers that are colonizers, right? Without a navy, unless you're like the Soviet Union, which did have a navy, but they weren't big colonizers, right? They colonized because there's such a huge, large landmass that they started entering the stands, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, the former areas of the Horde, Georgia, Azerbaijan, all those areas there. They pushed out, they pushed out. That's how they expanded. We could have expanded down south to Mexico further, right? But that kind of stopped. We decided it wasn't worth it because we're too spread out. Then, when we did build the Navy, the big Navy, and entered into power, now we could have done it. We got the Philippines, can move out from there, Marshall Islands, everything, kind of move out. And I don't think I think we lost the imperial taste, the taste for manifest destiny to take over the whole world with our form of democracy. Well, our form of republic. And then, like I said, when we talk about Texas and the slave state, right? When you're talking about the republic as it stands now, since when did Alaska get into, was it like 49?
No, 59.
59, Alaska became a state. So since 1959, we've become all happy with the idea of 100 senators, right? All happy with that. 100 senators. But now, without being imperialistic, they're trying to add in, 4 more senators. D.C., which is a no-go because it was established to be neither north nor south, neither left nor right, neither Democrat or Republican. It was the District of Columbia. They don't get any senators, right? And Puerto Rico is not a state, no senators. If you give them statehood, there's 2 senators. Now we got 102. Which way are the senators going to go? On which side? Rather than say, hey, what if we just took over all of Canada and made 5 separate states? They're pretty liberal now. That would give you 10, right? But we'd have to be imperialistic and actually take them over. How about if we took over Greenland and Greenland became a state? There's 2 more, right? Depending on which side. But we all become happy with the 50-50 mix. Half and half. That's the only imperialism they're looking at now, is the imperialism of who's got the most votes in the Senate.
The imperialism of politics.
Of politics, yeah. I mean, the imperialism we could have, right, is industrial might. Our industry is kind of sputtered down because we let other people do the dirty work. The work Americans won't do, which is a lie. Biggest lie I've ever heard. If you were in the late 70s and 80s, and you were in between high school, and you're in the summer there, and you're looking for a summer job, put a couple dollars in your pocket to last you the next night, work for 3 months and maybe keep a little weekend job or something, but to last you for the whole year of your senior year or anything, right? You couldn't find a job in the city. You couldn't find, unless you were connected, right? I know a lot of people, I had a great, that's nice. You knew people and everything. They gave you a job. Not me, right? I would have taken any job. I'm an American that would have done anything. So, I'm getting off track here with the imperialism. We started with the Texas coming there and expanding the country. And one of the things they were worried about was slave versus free state, right? Trouble with Mexico was a free country. They had outlawed slavery. They invited in a lot of Americans that brought slaves with them that didn't like that. So they wanted to maintain their slaves. So what they did is they formed an uprising to fight against the Mexicans. I don't know, there's something I should have looked up. Was the Republic of Texas slave or free?
Well,
you know, because that, you know, it's back then, like you said, the manifest destiny, they're saying who could get the more free states or more slave states, and if you had more free states, you got more senators, and if you got more senators, then you could have a constitutional convention, and you could pass the 18th Amendment? No, the 13th Amendment. Then you could pass the 13th Amendment and make the whole country free. Right? But now it's like the same thing. It's not free versus, it's who has the power in the Senate. But there's not many states there. So people are talking about balking.
It was a slave-holding nation.
Yeah. See? So they got what they wanted. That's what I think. That's one of the things there. You know, if you're going to put on the tinfoil hat and talk about this and polk and everything, you know, kind of a plan by the deep Southerners there to keep the balance of power in the Senate. It took them, you know, some guys think long term. You know, they didn't get it right away. Took them 9 years. Well, yeah, around 9 years. But again, right? We're kind of late into the colonization game, into the empire game, right? And we purchased the Louisiana Purchase. We purchased Alaska. After the Mexican War, we purchased Mexico. We purchased the Philippines, Puerto Rico, Guam, you know, the rights to Cuba and everything. And now there's nowhere left to go where everyone else isn't there, unless we do it strictly by force or political influence or money. You know, that's what gets me there. Like I said, how many icebreakers does Denmark own? We talked about the Navy and be able to project force and be able to protect your own territories, right? So I think Denmark has 0. Yet they lay claim to one of the most ice-encrusted areas of Greenland. Yet they have no icebreakers that if they needed to go in there to bring supplies and stuff to the north or to defend it, they don't have the capability. But yet they won't sell them. They won't sell the land to someone that does have the capability, not only to protect it, but to exploit the natural resources. Because we're not in that world anymore. All right? We're not in that world anymore. Back in 1850, we probably could have taken Iceland or Greenland, not Iceland, Greenland, right? Probably, I think, didn't we talk about this where we had offered to buy Greenland back then?
We did, yeah.
Yeah, so we had offered to buy it and it just kind of fell through. But now, does Denmark have the industrial capability to exploit the resources in Greenland? Dig under the ice, find oil, find uranium, find coal, find, you know, freshwater deposits, find any other number of minerals, all right? Create a underground hydroponic farm thing. You use nuclear power for the electricity, melt ice. Does Denmark have the capability to do that? No. So it's just sitting there as like the National Park of Denmark. I don't think in this world, you know, they're talking, you know, you see how they're talking about the Iran and the Iran affair as us being imperialistic. Like they said, oh, you know, Iraq was a war for oil, we're being imperialistic. Oh, yeah, okay. We didn't take over anything. Afghanistan, didn't take over anything there. You know who's taking stuff over? You know who I think the last imperial power out there is, the last imperialistic power in the whole world, the ones that are working strictly as imperial and colonization. China. China comes into Afghanistan, builds some infrastructure, and is exploiting the lithium there. Lithium deposits in Afghanistan. They're exploiting it. We made it literally safe enough for them to come in and do it, But guess what? No one's attacking the Chinese because the Chinese will act like an imperial power. We did not. We could have. I think there would have been a lot less death on our part of our guys, a lot unnecessary death, had we acted like an imperial power, had we made Afghanistan a protectorate much like Puerto Rico or Guam, right? But hey, you're a protectorate of the United States. You're not actually the United States, but you're a protectorate. Anyone attacks you, we attack them. But if you mess up, we're going to be here to stomp the hell out of you. You'll follow our laws and everything. There's going to be no Taliban, none of that nonsense. And yes, we are going to exploit your natural resources, and it is going into our coffers of our taxes and everything. But no, we didn't do that. China will do it. But they go in there, exploit the natural resources, they leave. They'll leave a big hole in the ground, They'll create some temporary jobs, but once that stuff runs out, they won't do anything to build it up again. They'll just leave. So they're almost like what do you call it? Almost parasitic, right? Because if you're a good imperial power, right?
They're the slum landlord of the nations.
Yes. Good analogy. So, hey, can we take a break here? We went a long time, When I come back, I got to, take my coffee break. With us on YouTube here, I can't see myself. We're getting there, right? Or on the Facebook, and I don't do Facebook. They banned me. Well, that's interesting too. All right, so here's why I got banned. It wasn't for bad language, all right? Because being an author, you could check out my webpage, all my books there, 14 of them, 15's coming up soon. Psylink.net. I can't believe that wasn't taken. PSYLINK.net. No one says www anymore, but it's the internet, right? In the modern browsers, you don't even have to type that in. You type in Psylink.net, boom, comes right up for my books, right? And so I would put in some funny post or something, and then, or I would respond to someone's post and say, hey, read my book, because it related to something. Like if it was a science fiction out in space stuff, I'd say, hey, read my novel, Monkeys in Space. If it was something about artificial intelligence, I go, hey, read my novel, I Married a Bot Madam. Or if it was like something military, I go, hey, read my novel, Rumble or Under Platoon, right? Police related, I had those, right? And apparently someone had complained because I wasn't paying Facebook to run advertisements. I was just making a post and putting a link to the Amazon, to where my Amazon author page is, right? Figure that's cool, And I guess they caught up with me. Not only did they ban my personal one, but I was running one for the American Legion, right? The American Legion. They didn't ban it immediately. They said I was on a 180-day timeout. But I could, if I wanted to, appeal it. I'm like, no, I don't want to appeal it. I'll wait the 6 months. After a month, they said, well, you haven't appealed this. You have 1 month to appeal it. Otherwise, we're going to give you a permanent ban. I says, I don't want to appeal it. I mean, like, you said 6 months, and now you just gave me, you made it a life sentence, right? I go from 6 months in county to life in hard labor. I'm like, I'm never coming to your stuff. So that's why I don't do Facebook, right? But Psylink.net, oh man, I talked myself into a circle here. Facebook. So that's why I don't do Facebook. I don't do Facebook there. But we have the YouTube Live, and we do have our own YouTube channel. And sometimes I'm a little slow at uploading them. Sometimes I'm a little faster. But I take the shows, I edit out the commercials, and then I upload them to Chief Guard of the Republic YouTube channel. So Chief Guard of the Republic. We got like 2 years of shows on there, Paul. That's getting to.
That's awesome, man.
We're getting close to 200 hours worth of content, man. I'm a content creator. You're a content creator. Some of them are thanks to you and Marla.
Yep.
I think it would be really cool, you know, if me and you took a break and we bring on this Sherry McKee, all right, that wrote this book here about the museums, and have Marla sitting where you're sitting, and I'll have Sherry sitting. If Sherry comes on, you're going to have to definitely have Marla on.
I will.
Then we could walk away and leave it with it.
Okay.
Okay. Yes. So we have still, no matter what they say, still the most powerful Navy in the world. We've proven it, right? Even, how many ships have we lost to drone attacks?
None so far.
None. How many ships have we lost to these speedboat attacks? Because that's what they're worried.
We had a couple of attacks, maybe 3, but none lost.
Yeah, nothing lost. You know, that's Sonar here was talking about the Straits of Hormuz, and there's 2 things there. One is that they have passive sea mines, all right? And like a landmine, you have to step on it. Or you can have command detonated, right? You can have Wi-Fi signals going out. They used to use cell phones, you know, to set off these IEDs. Or you could just have a line of blasting cord, det cord, right? And daisy chain these things and blow them up all at once. Or you can have like Claymore mines where you have each one individually wired and you hit the clacker, fire in the hole, boom! You know, oh, those things are nasty. They're very fun to blow up, but they are one nasty weapon. All right, these sea mines aren't floating. They're not floating there, right? Because you can take a minesweeper and cut the wires, cut the cables, or pull them to the surface, or engage them so far away that they're not going to damage the minesweeper. It's just going to blow up. Once you clip the cable and these things pop up to the surface because they're semi-buoyant, then you shoot them with the 25 mic, you know, or the 40 millimeter or whatever. You hit them, you blow them up. Oh, landmine gone. Hit a little bit of sonar down there. Oh, there's a few we missed. Go with the minesweeper, pick them up, clean them out, say, okay, now we see any ships out there and they're laying mines, we sink them. And then we know where they were because we tracked them and we find if they laid any. Okay, these mines have been set years ago, decades ago, and they're at the bottom. And they're passive.
And they've drifted too.
Some of them have drifted, they don't know where. But once they turn those things on, I don't think they've turned them on yet. Once they turn them on, then they listen with sonar. They listen. And if they hear a certain screw noise from the engines, from the motor, from the propellers turn, if they hear a certain noise, they activate, they shoot up, and they head for the biggest piece of iron above them.
Some of them are even just magnetic in general.
They'll just come up as a big magnet.
And so when you put metal across the water, the entire ship becomes magnetic. And that magnetic field just penetrates right down to the bottom and come right back up.
Yeah, so there's another passive way, just through the magnet. So these things may be a dime a dozen, but we got to find the guy that was supplying the dimes to tell us where they are, and one, to have freedom of movement, because you can't just speed through this strait there and find these things, right? You have to linger in an area with sonar or with this, or find a way, or my favorite thing is train a bunch of porpoises to blow themselves up. No, that's
Yeah,
what was that? Day of
the Dolphin.
Day of the Dolphin, yeah. The Day of the Dolphin. Man bad, man smooth. Taught the dolphins how to talk.
Pa loves pa. Pa loves pa.
Yeah. Anyways, that's a problem, all right? When you didn't we mine like Iraqi ports, all right?
Yeah, we've got some of them out there. There's another reason why the United States won't sign the anti-just landmine treaties either, is because we have so many out there that we don't know where we are either.
Okay, so talking about landmines, all right? So we will only use now smart landmines.
Now,
Right? No, we say that, God knows, God knows. But a Claymore mine, command detonated, is a smart landmine because as soon as you disengage it, you can render it relatively safe. All right, command detonated landmines or landmines that only have a certain serviceable time. All right, like the detonators only last so long, and then boom, you got to replace them. So that's whether to really do that or not, who knows? All right, but
I think the largest thing for the Straits right now isn't necessarily the like you were saying, the active attacks of Iran. It is the mines that are in there.
Yeah.
And right now, it's because the insurance companies won't back anybody up. They won't let anybody go through without that insurance side of it, and the captains don't want to lose their ship. Nobody wants to be the first ship down.
I'd be okay with that. Okay, so
When I was over
did
there,
you ever see
when I was over there, I didn't want to be the first ship
Did you
down.
ever
I
see
remember
Reap the
that
Wild
one.
Wind?
I have not.
John Wayne movie. It's a little hard to find out there because John Wayne plays a German merchant marine captain in World War II.
Okay.
All right. Was it World War I or World War II, Paul?
I believe it might have been between the wars.
No, it was during the war. It could have been World War. Anyways, he's got this tramp steamer and he's got a loaded nickel. All right, nickel was very important back then, and he's trying to make it back to Germany, at least to one of the German ports. He's a merchant marine. That's what he does, and he's got a German officer on the ship with him, and the German officer ends up killing a bunch of British sailors. All right, that were in the water, like machine guns them down. And now they're chasing after this guy for war crimes. He didn't do it. It was the German officer on board that was hitching a ride.
Okay.
Kind of weird stuff. And so at the end, he's on this German tramp steamer, and he knows he ain't going to make it. He's got the British have got him cornered, right? So he turns the steamer around, heading for these British destroyers and cruiser, right? And he flies the World War I Imperial battle flag. And he goes charging at them. Of course, they sink him, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it shows a boat on the shore later because you don't know whether John Wayne actually died in that one because they don't let you know.
Okay.
You hope that he escaped. But he was, I think he was knocked out at the end, and then the girlfriend that he was with dragged him off to the whaleboat and tossed him in. Well, spoilers. Spoilers for a movie that's about 100 years old. But yeah, so
It's Reap the Wild Wind was 1840 era. Sea Chase was the
Sea
World
Chase.
War
Okay, yeah, Sea Chase. That's right.
It was World War II. He was Captain Carl Arlick.
Okay, so yeah, Sea Chase. Okay, changed the Reap the Wild one was one he's in the he's in the Caribbean, or was it the Pacific?
Right.
Anyways, and an octopus kills him.
Correct.
Or was that Wake of the Red Witch? Who knows?
That's another one.
Yeah.
So he did 3 like that.
Yeah. Anyway, all right, so the Navy, again, same, very important. If you can't keep open your trade routes now, or for anyone else, and again, here is the world expecting us to keep the trade routes free and open. All right? So one of the things, we could escort these tankers, right? One, it's costing us fuel, right? Food, everything else, but also ammunition. All right, we could put destroyer screens on these things, and they're going to send in drone swarms if they still have them, because everything's a threat now. But what if they still have them? All right, all they need is one good drone swarm and sink one tanker, right? And then, hey, we win, right? But the drone swarms. Now, how much ammunition are we expending to kill these drones to protect this, and who's paying us for that?
Well, and this is where I think the Sea-Whiz should really shine instead of using all of these missile-to-missile countermeasures for drones.
Yeah, but you got to let them get close. So you're talking
They're
about...
going to get close to you anyway. Where do you think they're headed?
Well, no. So you're talking about the 20-millimeter Gatling gun.
I'm saying this: the Sea-Whiz.
What is that?
It's supposed to shoot off tomahawks or harpoons that are coming towards us. Sorry, harpoons that are coming towards our ships.
But,
instead of having another missile-to-missile interceptor that we've been using to blow up.
Yeah, those are expensive.
Yeah, why not just, I don't know,
you got to get close enough. You got to let them get close enough. People start relieving themselves when these things get too close. They're like, no, we'll shoot it down. Don't worry. Oh, what if you don't? No, we get it 20 miles out, get it 30 miles out. There's a limited 50 caliber, maybe about 3,000 yards. All right, effective range, and you're going to have at that range you're going to have enfilading fire. Right. Mm-hmm. So you still need the computer thing, and you need the radar transcript, and you need You're not eyeballing this thing. The computer's eyeballing.
Yeah,
right?
There is a manual control over the Sea-Whiz.
There could be. You can take it. If you got those Somali pirates coming at you, just lower the gun.
Another place I was as well. Yeah. Straits of Hormuz and Somalia, both of those places.
All right. So, that is available, right? But, all right. So each, those things, 2,000 rounds a minute.
Yeah.
2,000 rounds a minute. All right. How much ammunition can you carry on that, right? Mm-hmm. And then that's how many bursts.
More ammunition.
How many bursts get one drone? If they send 100 drones at you coming in from different, you see, they don't have to fly straight in.
Mm-hmm. Well,
right?
I also don't.
They fly and then they spread out and they come in.
But I don't have 100 missile-to-missile interceptors.
No, because they're very expensive. So it's an attrition war of who's spending more money. Mm-hmm. Right now, they can't spend any more money. All right. Because no one's selling them this stuff, and they can't bring it in because we also what did we do? We put a blockade. Much of the Mexican-American War. Why couldn't France come in? France come in and help them? Why couldn't Germany? Why couldn't Brazil? We had some issues with Chile and Argentina at the time. Shortly after the Mexican-American War, when we took over Monterey, California, the Argentinians took Monterey from us.
So the Sea-Whiz's effective firing range is 1.5 kilometers.
That's
maximum firing range is 5.5.
It's like 2,000 yards.
Yeah.
All right. So, but it's still, you can eyeball it. But the thing is, the idea of drone swarms is to send in so many. So what do you need? You need someone that's going to identify whose target it is. Mm-hmm. You need multiple ships because they don't, they think, oh, this is good enough for one or two coming at you. At the time, how many are they going to fire at you? So a couple of them, right? It's not like World War II and you're an aircraft carrier and the whole side of the aircraft carrier is, quad Boffers guns.
This is where I come in with it because the phalanx, I think is what it's pronounced.
Aegis phalanx, they have all sorts.
It's designed to blow up high-speed vampire missiles coming at us.
Yeah.
That's what it's supposed to do. Multiple ones. So it's already designed to take 50, 100, traveling at over the speed of sound at 2,000 miles per hour, or at that 1.5 kilometers. So, right? Yeah, that part out. You're telling me slow-moving drones in a swarm that if I shoot one, it's going to fall off on a bunch of other ones. The Sea-Whiz that is designed to shoot the same number of things faster won't be able to do it?
Okay, so,
this is what we were trained on for the Sea-Whiz to shoot
One of the things, these other guys on Psycho Radio, and the ultra conservative 560. I just call it Psycho Radio because I'm psycho too. So what the heck, But they're pushing these pepper spray guns. All right, it's a paintball that when it busts open, it's got the capsium, right? And maybe it'll affect you, maybe it won't. It probably hurt as much as a paintball gun. All right, but there's some people out there that think, oh, this is really going to protect me. I'm going, dude, that's going to get you killed.
Yeah.
All right.
I just get
and I says,
make
okay.
the guy mad.
I mean, how close you got to be to hit this, and how accurate is it, and how much training are you going to have with it? I says, and if you hit him in the leg, whippy. Oh wow. Oh, now I got a spicy leg. Oh look, I got a spicy shoulder. Oh look, I got a spicy chest. Or look, I do. Anyways, but you want to hit him in the face. You want to hit somewhere where this capsium's going to get. So you're talking about a drone, possibly the size of a kid's red wagon.
Okay.
All right. At what range will that phalanx gun be effectively able to hit something of those dimensions?
Maximum effective range is 1.5.
1.5. But that's effective means, all right, it doesn't mean accurate. All right?
No.
Effective means, will it go through you and kill you, or will it just bounce off of you?
It has a maximum firing range of 5.5. So that doesn't mean that I can't just start throwing rounds down there.
Yeah.
Oh, nope, hold on a second. It hasn't hit 1.5 yet. Don't start shooting yet. Oh, don't hold on a second. We got to see the whites in the drone's eyes.
Yeah, no, I know that, right? But
so why, that's what I mean. Is it purposefully to deplete this so that we have to put more money into it?
I'm not arguing you. I'm saying, I'm kind of engaging with this, but all I'm saying is we're there and we have a limited amount of these things, and our NATO allies also have them, and they're not with us except for Latvia, or I think Estonia, that said, hey, they may have one or two boats, but we're willing, and we've been ignoring them, right? But yeah, you can escort these things, and you could set up what we would do around the aircraft carrier in World War II. It's the basic thing. You could set something up there where you throw an umbrella over where nothing can get through. Yeah, and we should do it, and we should be forcing these things through. But no, like you said, the insurance companies, at some time, you got to say, well, I'll find another insurance company. And that's one of the things they're saying, that Lloyd's of London, if we, as the U.S. government, were to start insuring these people, right?
Then we're collecting.
And bring them through, we're collecting a bit. We put Lloyd's of London out of business. But then, remember, we're talking earlier, me and Sonar, I don't think we see exactly the same.
We're close enough.
Close enough. But there's an incestuous relationship that we're not a part of on the higher levels of the world, right? And Lloyd's of London is saying, oh, you can't self-insure them, you'll put us out of business. That's our biggest business, is the insurance. And if they all go to you, we're all out of business, and I won't be a rich guy anymore. Well, I will be rich, but I didn't properly invest my money. So I'm highly invested in a company, and I like the perks I get. So if I don't get those perks, I'd have to buy the perks, and then I'd have to spend my own money instead of the company's money. So listen, United States, you can't do that, because I deserve my perks because I'm Lloyd's of London. No, dude, go out of business. You're not too big to fail. You want to insure them? You insure them. You want to charge them too much where they want to come to me? Hey, that's the free market, buddy. If I'm going to charge less and they come to me, you got to lower your rates too. And auto theft. Oh, my God. All right, so I'm getting close. All right. Hey, let's talk about insurance. I don't know what we're going to talk about next month, but brings up a good point with the insurance. I'm not a friend of insurance companies, really. So,
yeah, but I watch the shipping news all the time, and these companies insure themselves.
Yeah, if you got a big enough one, it's like.
Well, no, they all are. They're the ones that are the market. What they got to figure out is some kind of modern day version of a barrage balloon, and they got to set it out a couple hundred yards away from the fleet or the ship, and they got to figure out a barrage balloon type thing, and then so that the drones will get caught in it, whether it's an electronic one, electromagnetic, or something like that, and then and have it parallel the fleet, and hopefully knock them out from that.
Okay. All right, so that's it for the show. And I guess the sonar will stay here all day. I don't know. I mean, we got the whole thing, but I think this is the limit. All right, Paul. Thanks a lot.
Take care. Have a great week.
See you guys next
Bye
week.
for now. Thanks.
Thanks.